Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 649 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our 9th book just came out. It's called From Letters to Leaders, The Legacy of Service. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, learning how to juggle is definitely one of my proudest moments, because it felt like I had some kind of superpower that very few people had really learned how to do. Our next guest has created a workshop to take advantage of that failure and growth that happens when you learn to juggle. And it's something that I know that our college student listeners are going to enjoy hearing about as well. Tom Hicks is the founder and CJO, also known as Chief Juggling Officer, of Throw and Catch Consulting based in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He provides practical and fun leadership development experiences that blend storytelling, reflection, and active learning to create deeper connections while playing with a purpose for individuals, teams, and organizations. Tom has worked at all levels in higher education for the past 20 years and has adapted several of his most popular campus-based workshops for organizations of all types. When he's not on campus or conducting workshops, Tom enjoys cycling and traveling with his wife, Megan, and cheering on their daughter, Emily, in all of her activities. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you having me today.
Of course, it's my pleasure. And I know that our audience is going to absolutely love some of the workshops that you've been putting on all over the country. So I'm super excited to hop into that. But before we get into all of that, I want to learn a little bit more about your background and where you came from. I know that you went to Hiram College for your undergraduate experience. So talk to our audience. Why did you choose Hiram?
Great question. I get that all the time. Hiram's a tiny school of about 850 in Northeast Ohio in a town of 400 without a gas station or a grocery store. So people always wonder how I end up at a small place like that. I grew up in a small town near Buffalo, New York, near Niagara Falls, and knew I wanted to go to a small place where I could get some individualized attention. I looked at a lot of the state schools in New York, and they're amazing schools, but I wanted somewhere smaller. I also thought I wanted to play some sports or a sport. And so I started that first year playing baseball and loved my time at college so much that I realized baseball wasn't in my plan. I just wasn't as dedicated as I wanted it to be. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. They had a great biology program, pre-med. After that first year, I quit playing baseball. I realized I wanted to be a teacher like my parents. And so I was so happy to be at a place like that where I ended up becoming an RA, which launched informally my career into higher ed. And so it ended up becoming a great spot for me to connect with professionals. I knew so many people by first name, professors, staff, and was a great launching spot for my career.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And of course, I ended up choosing the University of Buffalo with only 30,000 students, and I felt completely lost at all 30,000 students that were there. So I totally get, that small experience just feels, much more intimate, and you get to know all of your professors and all the students on campus. I mean, 30,000 students, I tell you, I'll be honest, I got completely lost and just flooded in the number of students, not knowing really where to connect. So I can see where a smaller institution would have been helpful for sure. I want to get into this juggling thing because it actually started with a gift from your grandmother. So I'm wondering, how did that moment shape what eventually became your signature keynote?
Great question again, Mike. And I actually have that gift right here with me. It's this black box. And imagine getting a black box from your grandmother that's titled More Balls Than Most, right? There's a few different meanings there, right? And so I asked my grandmother, who lived in Buffalo, what's this box about? And she said, just open it. I open it up. It's got 3 leather professional juggling balls in it. I thought, that's great. I've had dozens of opportunities to learn how to juggle, but never really was that interested. And then I took a look at the booklet that came with it. All juggling kits come with a booklet, right? And it's usually really dumbed down. It's Juggling for Dummies, literally, or Juggling 101. This one was a little bit different. It was titled A Short Course in Life Enhancement. And that piqued my interest even more. And I learned how to juggle that day in her house. And I carried that with me. I've never become a professional juggler, but it became something that I used when I needed a break between tough meetings or wanted to give my brain a break from some difficult reading I was doing or working with students or during a stressful time on campus. And so it became a tool for me to use to remind me to continue to grow. It's okay to fail. It's iterative. And then all of a sudden, I had three big things happen. I failed student teaching. I had a failed relationship, long-term, high school sweetheart relationship. And my dad got diagnosed with dementia in the span of about 6 months. And this juggling came into my rescue as something that gave me some relief and a path forward. And so, uh, when I was working at a previous institution, we were finding that first year students who dropped a letter grade from high school to college, so used to getting A's, now getting B's or C's or D's for the first time in their lives, were leaving without finishing the first semester or right after the end of the first semester. They thought they were failure. So we tried everything we could to let them know, no, this is a part of the process. This is learning and getting a B or a C or a D. Let's figure out how to be resilient with that. And so I developed this workshop out of that in order to teach them how to juggle literally one, two, and three balls while embracing failure and getting used to appreciating and celebrating that growth. And so I did it with students. Staff started to invite me to their staff meetings to do it with their staff, and it's just grown from there.
That is so cool. You and I both know that there's so many challenges in life, and so many times that you fail as well. I almost think that today's students are deathly afraid of failure, and that's when you learn the most. We know that. So, how does learning something that's totally new to you, like juggling, how does that help people to rethink how they approach these challenges in life?
Yeah, I like to think most of us were excited and had this amazing growth mindset when we were kids, when we were learning how to walk or run or play a sport or learn an instrument or ride your bike. I tell a great story about me trying to ride my parents' bike for the first time, and it was too big for me and crashing. And that was my first realization that maybe I tried to juggle three balls before I really knew how to do two, or I took on too much, right? The great thing about juggling is it allows for a bunch of low stakes failure to happen all at once. And so it's not this high stakes. And maybe it reminds us that that failure that we're so afraid of, not much of it is very high stakes. It's all a lot of low stakes failure. And so if we can build on that failure, it's truly an iterative process. We try, fail, learn, and try again. It gets you out of your comfort zone and gets you reconnected with this idea of growth mindset that so many of us had when we were kids. My daughter, who's 14, and in Iowa, at 14, you can get your school permit so you can drive to and from school and work. Well, that's been an amazing test in her growth mindset, right? There are hundreds of variables that you need to take care of when you're driving. And so it's been interesting as her instructor to be going through that again. And so it's a great test for these students and kids to be able to reconnect with that growth mindset.
That's awesome. Now, you've had a lot of experience within higher education, over 20 years. I'm wondering, how did all those experiences in higher ed influence your approach to speaking and consulting and coaching?
Yeah, great question. My teaching background in undergrad, I thought I was going to be a high school science teacher until I failed student teaching, and I realized maybe I need to go in a different direction. Uh, uh, Taught me a couple of things, and I really owe a lot of this to my mom. My mom was an amazing first and second grade teacher who always tried to include what's called Kolb's learning cycle. So this kind of experiential learning cycle that allows people to use the same system and come back to the same spot, but to be smarter each time they do it. And so it's active experimentation and reflection, and blending that with an audio, visual, and kinesthetic tactile function so that as people are learning, they are also doing. And so whenever I'm working with students or student groups, it's rarely me just talking with or at them. It's me demonstrating or providing stories and providing some more context. And that's a way for me to be able to meet students where they're at. I know that's a general like student affairs-y term, higher ed term, but that allows them to get a little window into me and for me to provide an environment that allows them to connect in a bunch of different ways. And then I just try to be a really good listener. I try to lead with listening, which then often brings out the best stories from students that we can use to blend that theory into practice.
Fantastic. We talked a little bit about failure earlier. I'm wondering, why do you think that so many college students and so many young professionals really struggle with failure today?
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, just about
Mm,
how it feels so heavy and so big,
mm,
and high stakes. That is so true today. One, I think students aren't given the opportunity to fail as much anymore. And so it feels new and it feels foreign to them. I don't want to blame this on social media. It's a cultural thing. My second part of this is we often just want to skip to the good part. There's literally songs with those lyrics, skip to the good part, right? And we don't post our failures on social. And so students have these ideals out there that others have reached these heights or these accomplishments without having to fail or without having to try hard or without having to learn. And so they don't get to see that evidence. They don't get to see that proof, all of that work that it went into it. And so that's a lot of the work that I try to do is just let students know it's not, it can be fun to fail. You can learn a lot from it. It's not always fun, but there is another side. There is improvement and growth that can happen.
yeah, for sure. I try to talk about a time that I failed in every one of my talks because I failed hundreds, if not thousands of times at just about every position that I've ever held in my life. And that's when you learn the most. I mean, it's just there's no substitute for it in terms of learning. So, maybe we just need to learn how to celebrate failure every now and then. And you also advise fraternities and sororities, governing councils in your career. I'm wondering, what leadership challenges do you see most often within Greek life?
Yeah, the two things that really stand out to me, and it can relate it back to the juggling a little bit, but the lack of foundational support and leadership. So I often find that new members who I think need the most structure, right? We like to start from a place of structure, and then if you can loosen up and give a little bit more flexibility, that's great. It should not start with a lack of structure. I believe the same thing in the classroom. Students should have structure. That syllabus day, students should know what they need to know. And then over the course of the semester, if you can let it breathe and you can provide some more flexibility, that's great. And so providing good new member education and can set a chapter up for success. So just like juggling, right? You need to get really, really good with one ball before you should move on to the second, right? That one ball is the foundation. And so many people try to move on to the second one because this is fun and oh, I've got this one down. You probably need to spend more time than you think, probably twice as much time as you think with that one ball before you move on to two, because two and three won't work consistently without that foundation. And then the other piece is less about the students and more about the organization. The best performing groups that I've worked with have had really strong alumni advising or local advising. And it's not easy to find that. And so there have been a few unicorns out there that have really allowed chapters to thrive. And I don't have an answer for that piece, but those are the two challenges that I see that I wish I could help chapters with more.
Yeah, I totally agree. All the best chapters of the country have really good alumni advisors. And you're right about that foundational piece, too. I mean, every class that we go to has a syllabus. So we lay out that expectation right from the get go. We should be doing the same thing in fraternity and sorority life. Where's that syllabus on everything that I'm going to be learning as a new member for that entire first semester? I think that would calm a lot of anxiety and would give a lot more structure to the program, which I think is needed. How can chapters use your 4 Ps, which are patience, persistence, purposeful practice, and purpose? How can they use those 4 Ps in recruitment, academics, or even chapter management?
Yeah, some of these might sound like stock answers, but I really believe in them. That patience piece, to me, my main thought is that it's about quality, not quantity, especially when it comes to recruitment. I know that swimming upstream. I know that's not always what chapters and national, international organizations want to hear, but you can also get quantity if you are spending the rest of the year doing your informal recruitment and being a great chapter. That makes it easier to attract and get more new members to commit. The persistence piece is just keep showing up for each other, right? Whether it's chapter meetings or chapter events, just making sure that the chapter, the leadership is creating a space where members feel comfortable being together and want to show up, even if it's not the most interesting event or the most fun event. That showing up for each brother or sister can go a long way when you need some help in more difficult times. And then that personal practice piece, the really practical side of this for me is I've long felt like chapter meetings need to be as meaningful as possible. That is sacred time that people carve out of their schedule. And so the time it takes to plan those meetings should be a priority and should probably take, just like juggling one ball, take twice or three times as long as you expect the meeting will be, in order to make sure it is done as efficiently and effectively, but also as inclusively and as intentionally as possible so that you are getting all the business you need to get done and making it a worthwhile. People need to feel like their time spent was worthwhile.
That's great points. I really, really like it. Yesterday, I was talking a little bit about hazing prevention with a national fraternity staff, and I talked about the importance of building trust. I think that's really, really important if we're going to beat things like hazing. The students have to feel comfortable to be able to come forward and talk about some of those problems without fear of retribution or a punishment. But they just want to make things better, and they're looking for a way to fix it. And I noticed that your workshops, they really do focus very heavily on both trust and collaboration. So I'm wondering, why are these two pieces, trust and collaboration, why is that so difficult for people to build and also so easy to lose?
Yeah. Trust and collaboration are difficult to build because they require vulnerability over a longer period of time. It's not something that just happens all at once. And they're easy to lose because one moment of fear or broken expectation can undo all of that progress that you've made. And so it can be on a razor's edge at time. And so again, being very intentional about creating environments that allow for that to be built is good. One of the things I often talk about in my juggling workshops is because juggling is a perfect metaphor for this trust and collaboration. It's vulnerability, it's repetition, and it's consistency. And so setting up, again, meetings or environments where you allow that to happen is great. We are also wired for threat in some ways. And so that fear can spread faster than confidence, and broken expectations can hurt more than those mistakes. And so that's where I love getting people in a room. I'm going to bring it back to juggling one more time, Mike, that when you are in a room with your chapter president or your alumni advisor or leadership, and all of you are failing together and being vulnerable together, it creates a new baseline, a new foundation of trust and vulnerability that allow you to build back up from there. And so those are a lot of words to say. That trust, it takes time and consistency and effort, and collaboration and fear often collaboration doesn't always allow for fear to be resolved altogether.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is that a lot of higher ed institutions are very concerned about the retention right now. That's kind of that magic buzzword. And I do think, by the way, fraternities and sororities do a really good job in terms of retention. If you look at the data from the Office of Institutional Research, you'll see that those who are affiliated have much higher retention rates than unaffiliated students. But you're working as a student support coordinator, and so you work very closely with these at-risk students on college campuses. So what are these students telling you about today's college experience?
Mike, they have so many real and imagined stressors. And when I say imagined, that is not to minimize what they are feeling at all. But we mentioned social media earlier. That oftentimes adds stress that isn't actually real to them, but feels real. And what matters is that it feels real. It doesn't matter if it's an actual stressor or not. And so that includes affordability and grades and parents and jobs and food and housing. And so these real and imagined stressors um, allow them to think everybody else is doing better than them or it's easier for them. When in reality, everybody else has their own challenges and need help and support. And they just don't see that. They assume everybody has got it all figured out. I was meeting with a student last week who is envious of other students who are able to be really good writers in their classes. All the while, this student hadn't received below a B on a writing assignment in their first 2 years, right? So they are more than capable, but they think and they think they see people out there doing so much better than them. And so there's a lot of work to be done around that.
Yeah, it's probably because social media is a highlight reel, like, just like you talked about before.
Yep.
You only see the best parts of everybody's life. You don't see where they fall and, just fall right on their face. You just don't
Yeah.
see that kind of stuff on social media. And I think, when you see that over and over again on Instagram, when you're going through your feed, you're like, man, am I the only one that's struggling out here?
Mhm.
But, you just don't see the truth. The other really cool thing about you is your mantra. I was driving from Nashville, Tennessee to Pittsburgh, where I'll be in a couple of hours. And on the side of the road outside of Nashville, there was a big billboard that actually had Dolly Parton. She's big in Tennessee. And
Mhm.
so, but it was just a message of kindness. It was just, choose kindness. And I was like, man, oh man, she just takes out a billboard to talk about kindness. Like, how cool is that? And maybe we need more of that. Your mantra is really good. It's be competent, curious, and kind. And I do think those three things would go a really, really long way for folks who are listening right now. How did you develop that mantra?
Mike, I will take any comparison to Dolly Parton you'll give me. So I appreciate that. And yeah, what a great message out there, right? So this came from one of my mentors, the former president. He's the president emeritus of Coe College. I worked at Coe for many, many years.
Mhm.
His name's David McAnally. And he picked up competent and kind from one of his mentors many, many years ago. Interesting story about Dave McAnally is he got his start as a Greek advisor in grad school at the University of Akron. And so he and I had a lot to talk about, and he came up through student affairs. But as soon as I heard him say that the first time, it resonated with me. And just recently, in the past year, I've added curious because it opens you up to learning and opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise. And so curiosity is the reason why I started juggling in the first place. And that became a theme that I kept hearing when I got feedback from my keynote and workshop sessions is just this new or newfound or reconnected to curiosity piece that people were sharing. And I realized that even though I hadn't included it, that's a big piece for me too. And so I just like to push that out there to let people know that I'm gonna ask you good questions and maybe some questions you weren't asking because I'm super curious about you, the work you're doing, and where your juggling skills are at right now.
Yeah, I like that addition of curious to those two pieces. I really do, especially when I think about our college campuses today and how diverse the student population is. I think that curiosity is the right approach as we learn new things, new cultures, new lenses that maybe we weren't exposed to prior to coming to college. So I really like that. I think that mantra is just absolutely superb. So well done there. Now, we do love good food here. So I'm wondering the next time I get to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I'm wondering where I should be going for a great meal in town. Can you help me out?
I can help you out, and it'll be my treat when you make it to town. This is going to take me back to my Western New York roots, and you may have some context for this as well. There's a style of pizza in Western New York called a white pizza. And in the Midwest or anywhere outside of Western New York, that white pizza usually has a cream base for a sauce. Whereas in Western New York, it is just olive oil and garlic and then mozzarella and maybe a little bit of onion on top. And for years and years, I couldn't find it outside of Western New York. And this little pizza shop in Cedar Rapids called Need, Need Pizza, opened up. It turns out the owners are great supporters of the local school district and sports and the arts, and so even better. But I remember walking in there the first week they were open. They had a white pizza, and they had New Haven style, so similar to Western New York, but not exactly, but as close as I could find. and a white pizza on their menu. I read through it, and the owner came over just to check in on us. I said, "This is the first time I've ever seen or had this style of pizza out of Western New York. It reminds me so much of pizza I had growing up." And so, need pizza, white pizza with onions on top is where I'd take it, Mike.
That sounds absolutely delicious. And just so you know, I'm speaking at the University of Buffalo on March 1st. So I'll be in Western New York for at least 3 days looking for the white pizza, the real deal.
Yeah,
Well,
I hope you get some. I'm envious.
but I'll definitely check out Need next time that I'm in Cedar Rapids. That sounds absolutely perfect. And I will definitely let you pay. That's totally fine by me.
Deal.
All right. So if students want to bring your program, which I think is absolutely phenomenal, I've really enjoyed learning about it, but it's called Embracing Failure and Growth Through Juggling. How can they bring this to their campus next? Where can they go to connect with you and make sure that you come to their campus?
Pretty simple and straightforward. www.throwcatchlead.com or tom@throwcatchlead.com. And a little background on that is when I teach juggling, we literally say out loud with one ball, throw, catch, and with two balls, throw, throw, catch, catch, and then with three, throw, 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 catch, catch, catch. And so that's a little nod to the juggling in my business consulting name. And so www.throwcatchlead.com.
Throwcatchlead.com. Go and check it out. Bring Tom to your campus because I'm telling you, he absolutely knows what he's talking about. And the fact that he's bringing juggling, I mean, how fun is that? I mean, I love it that it's hands-on and we get to experience a little bit of failure along the way, which again is just such a great learning tool. So thank you so much for what you do, Tom. We really appreciate the time that you spent here, and I've just enjoyed getting to know you. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Safe travels. This was great.
All right, you got it. And to all of our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Tom Hicks today, if you learned something, what I want you to do is I want you to share this episode with your chapter. So drop it in a group chat, a link, or just share the link on social media. You never know who needs to hear Tom's message today. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.